Welcome back to my channel. I'm Liana from lianavibes.com, and in today's video we're going to go over my narcissistic ex-boyfriend. Aside from my narcissistic ex-husband, the other narcissist in my life who I often reference to on this channel is the person I'm presenting today, my narcissistic ex-boyfriend. To protect his identity, I'll name him Casey. So I met Casey at a music festival back in 2017, and I'd gone to this festival with my girlfriend and just wanting to have the time of our lives. And we met these two guys, and they were friends. And my girlfriend, she started dancing with this one guy, and I started dancing with Casey. We hit it off throughout the entire night, and by the end of the festival, we exchanged numbers and started going on dates. We'd be together for about 1.5 years, and there was a lot of things that I had learned in that relationship. This is during a time that I wasn't aware of things like attachment styles or even narcissism. However, from this experience alone, I learned the beginning stages of narcissism, especially that narcissists, if you can survive them, can be our greatest teachers. Here are the lessons, and here is that story. Number 1, narcissists often have family traumas. So you've heard me mention before adverse childhood experiences, ACEs scores, and if you don't know much about that, I'll leave a link of that in the description box below. There's no studies that I'm aware of where it links narcissism to high ACEs scores. However, I'm willing to bet on it. And I'm confident that high ACEs scores may lead into either things such as narcissism, which is one pathway, or on the other is someone who self-abandons and may become codependent or have anxious, preoccupied attachment styles. Family history plays a big role in how we perceive the world, because this is our first interaction, therefore our first lesson on who we are, our established character and values, especially tradition. In my relationship with Casey, I'll never forget that he lived in a big mansion, a big home, and yet he had to sneak me in the back door entrance. He had this beautiful big koi fish pond, and the only people living in that giant house with his mom and his dad, as well as his sister. Now, I'm very understanding to people's unique circumstances, and I wanted to understand further why I was not allowed to meet his parents, let alone our relationship being public for them to know about. And he explained it was because he was raised to value studies and that he was going to go to medical school, and they had been priming him since he was a young child that he was meant to be a doctor. In fact, his childhood was full of all these medical school preparatory systems, as well as just getting him refined and ready to take the medical exams to enter medical school. So from the beginning, his entire life was about becoming a doctor. It's very reflective of tiger parenting, which is very known in Asian households, where the parents are very strict and very stringent on what they want their child to be. Essentially, the child is not able to form a self-identity and instead becomes an expression, an extension of the parents' wishes and dreams. I inquired and asked him, do you actually want to become a doctor? And his response was that he wanted the money and the fame that was alongside with that. It was a means to an end towards a lifestyle, one of prestige and a lot of money. He also expressed that he didn't really care about patients or the people. He was there for the money, and that he really wanted an MD, a doctor title. His heroes and idols are people like the character on House, where the doctor is really mean and he's really good at being a doctor, but he just doesn't have the right bedside manner. I would stay in this room that we would sneak in, and he would let me stay overnight, and it was all about just making sure that his parents and family members did not come into the room, and it was very secretive. Now, his mom and dad slept in separate rooms, and his sister, who apparently had been going to pharmacy school, she never left her room, and he explained it's because she had some sort of psychological disorder. And the further along in the relationship, I started to wonder if she was even real, because apparently she's going to pharmacy school. However, she just never leaves her room. And this wasn't during the time of lockdowns. This was back in 2017. I found the dynamic at their home to be very weird and very estranged, and he always chalked it up to his Vietnamese culture. And and that it was interesting because he shared that his mother would shower him and his sister till he was age 13. I don't know if this is common in Vietnamese culture. If you're Vietnamese and you're an audience, would you mind sharing a comment below if this is normal in Vietnamese culture, to shower your teenage son until the age of 13? I also learned of specific abuses that were in the home and the household. So therefore, I did learn about Casey's high ACEs scores. However, because of his resources, his nice car, his nice home, his mansion, his lifestyle, even with a high ACEs score, there's all these resources to help forget about it. Number 2, narcissists have toxic friendships and narcissistic supply. So one thing I noticed with Casey was that he easily triangulated with a lot of different women. What this looked like was when we were dating, he knew a lot of people. He used to be in a fraternity, a medical fraternity, in a very prestigious school. And everywhere we went, people just seemed to know him. In fact, because of where I was at that time, these are some of the factors that really attracted me to him. He drove a nice car. He had a lot of great resources. He knew a lot of people. These are factors for me that, looking back, I understand why I was attracted to that. It presented security for me, because for me, I was the kid that was being bullied for most of my life and being tormented and tortured, singled out and targeted for who I am. Being with Casey would represent something where I wouldn't have to feel those hurt emotions of being singled out and othered for my entire life. But the triangulation was always apparent. He would be on his phone and hide out in the bathroom, and I never questioned him or even went through his phones. But there was this one incident where he accidentally left his phone at my place, and I messaged him on Messenger that you left your phone at my home. So he came quickly, and he looked so terrified. I think looking back, he thought that I was the type of person to go through a person's phone, but I'm not like that. Instead, the way that I operate is, if I really want to know what's on your phone, I will ask my partner, hey, I'd like to see who has been messaging you constantly late at night. I would just like to know the name. I don't need to know exactly what is being written, because that's a person's privacy. However, knowing who's contacting them is a public free forum, because I feel that's not something that should be secret. Casey often sold rave and concert and festival tickets and tried to basically sell them for a profit. And so there's always a lot of people in and out, and his phone would always be blowing up, but I never checked his phone. I was never the type to basically sneak into his phone, but he was always very, very protective of it, always hiding out in the bathroom. Now, with Casey, he had a lot of guy friends who were also in the university that he went to, and they were very, very close. They were childhood friends of his. I had no issues with them. They all came from very established, prestigious backgrounds, and they had a lot of resources. However, I started to realize, and this entire spell of thinking they were these untouchables started to break for me. The reason why is they would go on these annual guys trip. And there's nothing wrong with a guy's trip when you travel internationally. That is amazing. It's the things they would do on the trip. Furthermore, there'd be these monthly guys parties where it'd just be the boys in their friends group. And I later discovered that Casey informed me that in these guy nights that they would have where they play Super Smash Brothers and get drunk, they would actually show videos and photos of their girlfriends' naked bodies and their girlfriends giving a blowjob or other sexual activities to the guys. And that was really disgusting for me to find out, because it showed me just how much they objectified their women and basically treated them like Pokemon or baseball cards, something that you traded. And I'm almost certain that after a relationship had ended, Casey had done something to that line. And it just makes me really disgusted that that's their standard and that's their value, that they're able to show their girlfriends' bodies to each other. And it was a big guy group. It was more than a dozen of them. Some of these girls are still with those guys today, and that's basically about 6 years. And I don't know if they knew about this, but their entire guy camaraderie boys' night wasn't for innocent purposes. It literally had where women's naked bodies, the girlfriends' bodies, were put on display. To me, that's very disgusting. It doesn't show love. It shows high narcissistic antagonistic traits, especially because you're looking at your partner, your girlfriend, as an object to feed some sort of grandiosity to be accepted by the bigger group as a whole. Let me know in the comment section below if you believe this is strength and if you think that's an appropriate action by a group of guys. And again, these group of guys are very successful. Some had jobs as accountants, some had jobs in medical fields like tech. These were guys with money, accessibility, and resources more than the average person. Number 3, narcissists make negative comments about your body. So me and Casey went to Hawaii this one year, and it was our first time on a major trip, and we were there for a week. We stayed in Airbnbs as well as resorts, and it was a really fun time. It was my first time snorkeling in Hanamala Bay. Just really beautiful, and seeing octopuses, and it was really fun. The resort that we stayed at had this balcony front oceanside view, and this one day we saw these double rainbows overlooking the ocean. It was really fantastic. The aloha spirit was absolutely alive on this vacation trip. However, the week following, we went to my girlfriend's house for her birthday party, and it was going to be a lot of people. It was themed out, really beautiful, and I was looking forward to seeing my friends and telling them about our Hawaii trip. My girlfriend baked these handmade muffins, and it looked really delicious. They were purple and fantastic, and I wanted to try some. And I reached for one, and then all of a sudden, Casey barks at me, "I told you, you're getting fat, stop eating." And I was in so much shock because he was actually very angry. I was embarrassed, and some of my girlfriends saw this and kind of just like didn't know what to say. And I just kind of fell silent, and I wanted to leave a couple of minutes after that because I didn't want to cry at my girlfriend's birthday party. Later that evening, we went to my house, and he just kept on saying, "I don't want a fat girlfriend. I don't want a fat girlfriend. I don't want a fat girlfriend." See, one of the beneficial things I learned in that relationship was he got me into the gym, and we started to go like 4 times a week. It was something that was new for me, and it was something like a beautiful challenge. I got a membership and would go to Casey often to the gym with him. He would pick me up and we'd go, and we would just spend like an hour, sometimes 2 hours just gymming, and then basically calling it a night and going our separate ways and repeating this whole pattern the next day. But Casey would make these very degrading statements inside the gym as well as on the drive home. And I didn't know what to say, and I'd feel really crappy about myself because he's like, "You're not progressing, you're getting fat. I don't want a fat girlfriend because I'll break up with you if you're fat." And that was at the course of the year and a half together with him. He projected a lot of shame on me when he himself didn't necessarily have abs, nor did he have the biggest chest, which were some of his insecurities, but I never called him out to make him feel inferior. Furthermore, in our intimacy moments, it was interesting because we would be intimate, and then he would basically pull back and say, "When I do these specific sexual acts with you, I want to shoot myself in the face." And he'd make me feel so disgusting about myself and really bad. And I started having nightmares and just anxiety because it seemed like every single time he had a opportunity to say something negative about my body, he took it all and made sure to make me feel like complete crap. One of our biggest shared loves was going to music festivals, raves, and just enjoying ourselves. And specifically at raves and music festivals, you're not necessarily dressed up all covered because there's a lot of heat and you don't want to overheat. In fact, places like EDC, the Electric Daisy Carnival, they'll have these cool down rooms to make sure that you don't overheat, because that's exactly how a lot of people get injuries or get very sick, is because of overheating and dehydration. So after this Hawaii trip, Casey would often say, "Whenever we're at a festival and you take off your jacket, all I can think about is your belly. I can't even focus on the DJ. I just think about your belly, and that's all I focus on throughout the entire night because you're so fat." I didn't know what to say. I wanted to make this relationship work. I wanted my relationship with Casey to work out, but he always was condescending and rude and made me feel so abolished and diminished in front of his eyes that I needed to change myself for his acceptance and approval. It made me sad to think that in a 6-8 hour music festival, all he could think about was my belly and how disgusting and gross, and how much he was just debating whether he should just break up with me because there was so much more thinner girls around, and that was much more important, was the aesthetic of our relationship rather than the emotional connection. I still recall to this day the pictures of my progress of losing weight. I started to hardcore crash diet and making sure that I was losing pounds as much through the weeks because he held me to a specific standard, and I basically became very unhealthy where I would obsess on everything like appetite suppressants and things to make me feel really skinny so I can feel beautiful in his eyes. In a narcissist world, you're always going to try to fight for their acceptance, but that acceptance and approval will never come. There's simply simply projecting their shame and insecurity on you, and their shame and insecurity is infinite. So you will infinitely be changing, but you'll never get the result that you want, which is closeness, respect, consideration, love, and kindness. Number 4, narcissists can harm your health. So I shared in a previous video about my disability, my first initial disability, where I was injured at the nightclub that I was managing at, and then the following day, my ex-boyfriend, which is Casey, dropped me on my leg. So essentially, I was managing as a general manager in a popular nightclub in the city, and I had a customer fall on me, and that really hurt my leg. Felt a little uneasy, but did not cause an issue. The next day, Casey and I had these reservations, these plans for a dinner, and I was excited to see him after a long week. So I was kind of limping at this point, but it was nothing really substantial. And we went to dinner. It was a really delicious meal, and we were walking back to the car. But as we're walking, I noticed that I was limping more and more, that I was unable to stand on it. So Casey offered to give me a piggyback ride. And on this piggyback ride, he has me secure. And then we turn a corner and we're near the car, and all of a sudden Casey drops me. He drops me without letting me know he's about to let me go, and I land on my bad leg. At that moment, I feel this incredible fire go up and down my leg, and it just goes completely paralyzed and numb. The numbness wears off, and then I can't feel my leg. I'm in the street crying, yelling like, "Why did you do that? I can't feel my leg." And then Casey helps me back into the car, and it was like crying. I'm like, "I can't feel my leg." And he is like, "I'm sorry, I just saw people." Casey was so much more involved with how people perceived him carrying his girlfriend on his back rather than my safety. And now I was paralyzed for about a month and a half after this incident. This would be prolonged from a job that would basically gaslight me and make me do these heavy lifting that I certainly could not do after I healed my paralysis from that injury from that night that Casey dropped me. Now, bringing it back to the gym, essentially my legs started to get a little bit of life back. I was still limping. I wasn't 100%. However, I was dedicated to getting stronger, going to rehab and physical therapy, and my physical therapist approved me to go to the gym with specific exercises in mind. So Casey and I went back into our routine. He'd pick me up, we'd go to the gym and spend an hour or two every single weekday night. Well, one of my favorite machines was the Smith machine, which allowed me a guided squat, and I was using very light weights because, mind you, I was still in rehab and still having a limp. So tell me why, just weeks after getting sensation back in my leg and just walking, a little stumbling, a little abnormal gait, Casey was very pushy with how much weight I was doing on the Smith machine or any type of workout. For example, we first started off with just a 5-pounder. And I felt comfortable with that, and it was still very challenging because, again, my leg was still encountering weakness and numbness. So tell me why is Casey basically screaming at me in the gym almost every single gym session where he's like, "You're not progressing. What are you doing? Look at how weak you are. Look at how pathetic. You're not progressing. Like, look at how much I'm progressing. Look how much better I'm getting, and you're just getting lost in the dust." There were times I wanted to just burst out in tears because he didn't understand that it was so challenging when, again, your leg is numb and it's experiencing weakness. And it's shocking for me, for someone who wants to become a doctor, that they don't have the proper bedside manner. You cannot teach empathy. No matter how much you want someone to give you empathy, you cannot teach a person, especially a narcissist, empathy. Empathy is a choice. It's a decision that you develop with every choice that you make in your lifetime. And for someone like a narcissist, they can do performative empathy, which is just on the fly, but it's more of a logical experience. It's like they think about, this is what it might feel like, so therefore here's how I might react. So let's try to express that. It's not the deep attunement and reciprocity that you're looking for. And Casey yelling at me, who wants to become a doctor one day, is making me feel negated and diminished for doing my absolute best while I'm still limping in a gym and trying to show up and still having the confidence and the bravery to show up even though I'm walking a little abnormally. It absolutely takes courage to show up in a gym where you can be up for ridicule and judgments when you're trying to do best for yourself. But Casey had zero support for me. All he had was criticalness, making me feel diminished, and condescending attitude towards me when he was one who dropped me because he was too embarrassed for other people to see that he was helping his girlfriend out. Number 5, narcissists triangulate and they cheat more and more. So there is a study out there that claims that dismissive avoidants oftentimes do cheat because it is a self-soothing, deactivating strategy for them. Many narcissists have an insecure attachment style, whether that be anxious preoccupied, dismissive avoidant, fearful avoidant. The more common type of narcissism where it's very malignant and they just want everyone to love them and everyone to just, give them the accolades and the appreciations and just all the focus and time and energy, is because narcissists do not have a sense of self. They have a lot of internalized shame and insecurity, so they constantly need narcissistic supply to basically help them believe the false realities they have about themselves. Always the grandiose one, always the one with the cool car, the nice hair, the richness, the resources, the popularity, all of the outside external factors to tell them who they are. One thing I noticed about Casey is he didn't know who his best friends were. When I would ask him who his best friends are, it would change month by month. And I think the reason for this is because he just didn't ever feel close to people enough where it was like an emotional connection. It was more just kind of for logistics. So what I mean by this is I noticed with Casey, he would often need to be around a big, large group. He claimed he was an extrovert, but I started to question if he really was an extrovert or that he needed a constant supply of people to tell him who he was. If other people are glorifying him in a moment, he knows who he is in that moment, glorified. If people are saying, nice car, your car is so dope, it looks like one of those rice rockets, then he knows who he is when people are appreciating him in that moment. But that's the thing with external factors. You need someone in the moment to tell you about the feedback of that external factor. When it's an emotional connection, that type gives you that type of just afterglow that, yeah, I feel loved, I feel cherished, and that makes me feel so good in the day. That's something that narcissists are missing. And that's something that Casey did not have. So nearing the end of our relationship, Casey started adding these girls from his work. Initially, I was kind of taken aback, but I wanted to give him the benefit of doubt. And when I inquired about it, he just kept on attacking me. You're jealous. You're just jealous. You're too nosy. You're a jealous. Eventually, my inner intuition proved true. This one time, Casey came over for his birthday to my house. I bought him a cake and presents, and we went and hung out in his car. And then he left to his work, and he got off work usually a little late, and then he would go home and text me when he's home. So the next morning, he decides, hey, let's go to the gym. He picks me up, and we're on the way to the gym, and I was like, thank you for driving me to the gym. Is this your water? Can I have some? I noticed the water bottle had his work logo on it, so it's from his work, and I open it up, and there's this red ruby lipstick all over it. And I looked at it and I was like, this isn't your bottle, this is lipstick. Whose is this? I also noticed all these stuffed up tissues on the side part of his seats, and they're also sprawled on the ground of his car. I asked him, where'd you go last night? What is all this tissue in this bottle that has some lipstick on it? And he's like, I didn't go anywhere. My mom used my car, and she had to, went to my aunties and cousins and then came back. And I was like, late night? I know that your mom usually goes to sleep super early. You guys aren't usually out. You guys have dinner and go to sleep. What are you talking about? And then he started to get really defensive and started to get really angry at me. And I tried to ignore it on our way to the gym. After our gym session, he started to just get really upset at me and basically saying, I had enough of you. You're so accusatory. You're so jealous. You're so all these things. And then he wanted to break up with me. So I let him go. After being criticized and diminished for so long, I was like, if you're not happy, just go at this point. I'm done. I'm obviously sad, so my friend invites me out for a drink on this Friday night, and Casey and I had just broken up maybe 2 or 3 days ago. So I'm drinking with my friend and he's cheering me up, and all of a sudden Casey walks in with the girl from work that he told me not to worry about, and he sees me and starts basically guiding his sight and vision away from me. So he'll be like, I'm here, and he'll go like that. And it was so weird. So I tell my friend, hey, if I'm a little weird right now, it's because my ex just walked in with a girl he was probably behind my back with. My friend was really kind and said, sure, you know what, let's go to a different spot, let's go to a different bar. So as I'm leaving, I see Casey and he's with his new girl, and I'm just thinking like, you piece of like, you're just disgusting. So my friend and I go to this other spot, we're just drinking, it's a really fun time, and I'm like, wow, okay, like, out of that situation, I just want to have a fun night. It's really awkward seeing him, especially with his new partner or girlfriend or hookup, whatever, what have you. And they pop up in the same bar, and I was just already so disgusted. Casey locks eyes with me, and he leaves, and I'm like, you know what? I gotta go use the restroom. So I'm standing in line with the restroom, and I realize the girl and her one friend are right there waiting in line, and they see me, and I'm just looking at them, and I just smile, and then she looks so embarrassed and so frightened that she says to her friend, okay, let's just go, and leaves. In a way, as surprising as the situation was, I realized I had dodged a major bullet because I'd gone through enough abuse with Casey. After that night out with my friend in the bar scene and seeing Casey, I realized that next morning that Casey had unfollowed me and unfriended me on social media, and specifically went through every post he's ever liked in our history and unliked them all. Going to show how petty, disgusting, and immature narcissistic people are. Yes, I was absolutely fooled initially. The nice car, the nice hair, being in a fraternity, having resources, accessibility to a lot of things. I thought that was respect. However, that person is not respectable because of their values as well as their character. Sure, Casey will become a successful doctor one day, I'm sure of it. There's a saying that especially brain surgeons are oftentimes narcissistic because you want a person of a narcissistic nature to be making critical decisions when it comes to brain surgery, as intricate as something as brain surgery. So there are those instances where narcissism may be a very valued trait, but my point being, with all its accolades and titles and high positions of power, these things still do not designate if you're a good person or not, if you're a respectable person or not. If I had stayed trying to always look for his acceptance, I would continuously disrespect myself because I'd gone through a lot with Casey, and I'm glad I didn't look back. He always made me feel like I didn't have the power or the courage, and I'm sure with the friends and rumors that he has, and I'm sure he looks down on me still to this day. But truth is truth. We're not talking about subjective truth and truth that fits a narrative. We're talking about objective truth. He was a damaging, abusive person. And the type of people who try to persevere with a person like that by their side really is just looking for a relationship of transactions, void of emotion. But hey, he's got the money. Hey, he's got the car. Hey, he may have the good looks. But when you start to see people for what they are at the emotional level, at the deep spiritual level, and seeing the true disarray and ugliness that they contain, they don't become so attractive anymore. My life after that relationship did have its ups and downs, but value and worth is not determined on whether or not good or bad days come. It's about the resiliency and showing up for all the good moments and through the bad moments too. To me, that's true strength. And so, if you're dealing with a narcissist or a relationship that was similar to mine and Casey's, I want to let you know that you'll make it. Just find the information to give yourself the empowerment, knowing that there is a life for you even after you leave. And that's all for today's video. Thank you so much for joining me today. Have you ever dealt with a narcissist who is similar to my ex Casey? Let me know in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you. Until next video, I'll catch you all in the next one. Stay well and vibe well.